Awesome. Okay, it looks like we're live. Welcome to the FACRA Take 5 Freeway protest. The traffic is diabolical. We're probably about 3 kilometres away from the start point, but it's so bad I thought I'd start it early anyway. We have a special... Wow, that sun's pretty bad. We have a special guest with us today, actually. So I'd like him to introduce himself. Professor Augusto Zimmerman, welcome to the live stream. Shake hands.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be talking to you with this beautiful weather here, a beautiful day, heavy traffic, by the way. My name is Augusto Zimmerman, as Travis has mentioned, and I'm a professor of law. I used to teach...
Oh, whoops.
Oops. No, it's all right here. Just he's fixing the...
That's a fail.
Yeah. So I used to be at not Notre Dame, at Murdoch, as an associate dean for research in the law school. It doesn't mean that you'll find people like me there these days, so be careful. I am and now I am at Sheridan College. We are trying to set up schools there, as we have already business and others. And by the way, I was a law reform commissioner, by the way.
Yep.
Former law reform commissioner.
So just to confirm, that's the law reform commissioner. That's federally for all policies?
Yeah, no,
Yep.
you have state law reform commissions and federal.
Okay, so you were the state or the federal?
I was the Western Australian one here.
Okay, and that was from 2012 to 2017 from memory?
Yeah, for 5 years, yeah. 5 years. But you know what? What the government does sometimes is to send their people to these commissions. And they actually do what the government requires of them. It's a little bit a complicated issue here, because the law reform commission should be independent, and it should be able to do things without the determination of the government. It should be independent and should be really cutting edge.
Oh, definitely.
It's not happening these days. You know, the whole process is corrupt in many ways.
Yep.
Unfortunately, you see this problem not only with the commission, but the government has in many ways disregarded these agencies as being independent bodies. They just put their own people and they just advance their own causes. And in many ways, if the government is not happy with something, wants to change, but might not get the popular support, the support of the people, they send this to the commission so that they can actually do what the government is perhaps too afraid of being doing by itself. Sending this to others, and then they can do the job and return this with a nice report so that the government can justify the changes in the legislation based on these proposals coming from these commissions, the law reform commissions.
All
of
right.
course, there is a federal one and a state.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay, so welcome Dave Pemberton to the stream. So at the moment we've got a couple of people logged in already. It's pretty boring at the start because pretty much traffic is terrible, typical Perth. So just a quick rundown. What we're planning to do today is, like before, we'll drive along, we'll have a look at the banners, and we really want to get Professor Augusto Zimmerman to come in so he can actually give us, first of all, a legal perspective on why the banner ads are so important and why these implemented changes are so important, especially in regards to children and children's welfare. Alright, so we're actually moving a little bit. I might spin the cameras around. This will also be going up on YouTube at a later date, so if you do need to watch it again later, feel free to jump into YouTube. Also, an update, the FACRA website is now up and running, so facra.com.au. All our future events will be up there, as well as being posted on the Facebook groups. And also there'll be, and now there's a new donation button, so if you do want to help out, that will be up and running very, very shortly as well. So, to give you guys a bit of an idea of what we're looking at, I'm just going to flip this camera around. Come on, flip around. Oh, whoops. That's a bit of a fail. There we go. Come on, stay in there. So, as you can see, traffic, typical Perth traffic. It's 7 o'clock and we're barely moving.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to admit, the Coates Hire, please sponsor us. It looks like they're doing some stellar work on the side of the road here. I don't know exactly what they're doing. It looks like they're extending a bus lane or something. But yeah, so just to confirm, we do have Professor Augusto Zimmerman with us today. Lindsay, welcome to the stream. So we'll be getting a proper law reform commissioner's review on the banners and what needs to be done. So, from Mr. Augusto Zimmermann himself, what do you think is one of the first things that we can do? Because obviously the WA state election is coming up. What's one of the things that you think the WA government should do before the state election to actually start muting down the damage that the Family Law Court is doing at the moment? What's some action that can be done on the WA Parliament side of things immediately?
Well, there is probably two main issues here.
Yep.
But before I go there, I have to explain that we have a Family Law Act, which is a federal piece of legislation. The federal law is one of the main culprits and responsible for the problems we face.
Correct, and that's why we've got the Senate inquiry currently on it.
That's why we have this inquiry, which seems to be not going very well.
Oh, it's been hijacked by the lefties.
Yes, but we shouldn't expect anything different coming from the Morrison government, unfortunately, because it has been very disappointing, I must say, the performance of the government. But I also say to you that in terms of what the states can do, I think we have two things. One is that the operation of the family courts here are still state-based. It's the only part of the country where we have state family courts. In other jurisdictions, what we have is federal state courts.
Yeah.
But they all operate under the federal law. So that's another point I have to make. That even though we have state courts, they are actually under or having to apply or comply with the federal code, the federal law, the Family Law Act. We have to do something about the operation of the family court here. One thing that's very interesting, and perhaps that's the reason as to why this family law committee, the inquiry, is not coming to Western Australia, is that it would expose how bad family courts are here in Western Australia. And they want to give an excuse to the other parts of the country that if the federal courts are abolished, and if each state has its own family courts, then part of the problem would be solved and it would be an improvement. That's not true at all, because we have probably the worst family court in the whole country. It's really bad. If you think that it's bad, a federal family court, a state family court is not necessarily going to make any difference whatsoever, because here there is judicial delay. Here the courts are notoriously bad, and you know, we are not going to solve the problem in such a manner. It's just a facade. Another thing we have to do then is to see if you still have this power that is here in Western Australia to do something about this. Politicians in this country should be perhaps legislating on the subject of how to improve the quality of the services provided by the state family courts. One thing you have to do as well at state level is to review and certainly change the provisions in the Restraining Order Act. We have to do something about that. The worst changes were made a couple of years ago by the notoriously bad Attorney General that we had, Michael Minchin, and he introduced very bad changes in the legislation that are responsible for so much pain suffering here in Western Australia. We have to reestablish justice to the system, basically by, I would even say here, and I'm not being ironic, reintroducing due process of law and reintroducing the need for evidence to be provided before a person loses everything.
Okay.
Because what's happening, before I go, is that is that people are losing everything. They are losing property, they are losing access to their kids, and these people are entirely innocent.
Okay, we've just had a question come through from Lindsay. So, guys, if you do have a question, feel free to shoot it through to us. So the question is, would be good to hear Professor Zimmermann's thoughts as to whether individuals will actually get invites to the public submissions in the Family Law Court inquiry in WA. I don't know if you guys are aware of this. The inquiry is not coming to WA.
We don't know exactly.
Well,
explain.
Yeah, I'll let. So, on the inquiry website, they've actually put up the places that they are going to.
Yeah.
And WA's been totally left out of it.
Yeah.
I have personally emailed them to ask, please explain, see, One Nation thing, why they're not coming to WA, and I got a Dear John letter back. So, I don't know if, have you got more information about it?
Well, I sent a letter to the chair of this committee, the joint committee, and I have made this point that I couldn't see there any referencing, any mentioning of this committee visiting Western Australia because we think that we should be heard. The answer given to me is that it would not be the case that they would come, that this would just be the first cities they would visit. I'm not entirely convinced that this is true, but I have the letter from the chair promising that they would visit us. If he fails with his promise, I will expose this matter, because he would be then lying to me.
Yep.
Because he promised he would come and visit me. I'm starting to get a little bit suspicious about that, by the way. So
he's a politician, though, isn't he?
What Travis is saying makes sense, you know. I think he's in this committee a little bit cautious about telling me and others that they're not visiting us. So they might say, oh, you know, we will visit you eventually. But then when they will give another excuse saying that now it's too late to visit us, or that there is no time for this anymore. And if that is the strategy, I'm exposing this right now because you'll be able to know. If they don't come to visit us, we were basically betrayed by them. But if they come, and that will be important. But I think that in many ways they're not coming here. If they don't come to Perth, Western Australia, that will expose the fraud.
Yep.
That will actually prove that they are not doing a serious job. Because we have the right to be heard, and there is lots of people here who wants to have a voice, even to say that these so-called marvelous changes of, you know, abolishing the federal family court will solve all the problems. When in Western Australia we have so much of this problem of people who have been messed up by the family court, which is a state in Western Australia. It's doing a terrible job here, probably as bad, if not even worse, than in any other jurisdiction in Western Australia under federal courts.
Okay, and just for the guys that are watching at the moment, please invite all your friends to jump onto this live stream, because you can ask questions of Professor Augusto Zimmerman. His knowledge is insane. He's written so many books on the laws and stuff like that. To my understanding, to date, you've actually written 12 books.
Yeah, about that. I lost the count.
Yeah,
because I have also edited books as well.
So he's an extremely intelligent person. He's got so much knowledge and experience in this industry. Now, we have had a comment from Trainer. Welcome to the stream, Trainer. No child will live in poverty was the goal. Now the Family Law Court and child support agencies, we have entire families now living in poverty. Both must be shut down.
Yes, I can talk about that. I think child support agencies should be shut down. There is no doubt about that. I think this matter should be decided on the basis of fairness and justice by the courts. What's happening with the child support agency is that it operates beyond the limits of legality. And it's not even enforcing court orders. I mean, we have parents who lose access to the kids even though they have a court order allowing them visitation, and the other parent communicates the child support agency that she or he has basically alienated the children by not complying with the order, so that they can obtain financial advantage at the expense of the child and the other parent. What happens here is that the child support agency incentivizes parental alienation as a result. And it's very clear, it's not like I'm making an accusation, it's obvious that this is the case. It's absolutely obvious and clear that there is a link between child support agency and its operations in terms of child support payments and parental alienation. If you prevent the other parent from seeing your kid, you just need to call the child support agency that you disregard the rule of law, you disregard due process, you disregard a court order, which is basically a law, will basically enforce this alienation and reward the person who is destroying the lives of innocent people, because of course parental alienation leads to all sorts of problems for the kid. Many kids in this country are without seeing their parents for many years, and that will lead to all sorts of social problems such as drug addiction, incarceration rates amongst people who are alienated from their parents is higher than the average, and you have many other social ills that are caused by this. So to make this very clear and be very short on this, we have to do something about the problem, and perhaps the best way to go is to abolish the child support agency. It's not working, the system doesn't work.
Yeah, definitely. Now, I've also heard, talking to people outside the family law courts, obviously FACRA sets up outside Armidale Court, I think it's Joondalup Court. We've also do it outside the actual family law courts in Perth itself, offering support to people going through the process. And one of the things we constantly hear is that child support payments should have absolutely nothing to do whatsoever with custody of the care. In fact, it should be the opposite, where parents who do have shared custody arrangement, and like Augusto said, and enable both parents to have equal access to the kids, there should be incentives in the form of additional child payments from the government to ensure that the child does have, in fact, access to both parents.
Well, another thing you have to bear in mind is that nobody should have to pay anything if the decision is made against the person's will. For instance, I can say to you that if a parent decides to not have a relationship with the child, I think he or she needs to pay child support, because it is morally reprehensible for a parent to not want to see his kids. But child support payment has nothing to do with that. It has nothing to do with a parent who wants to just not see his kids. It's the opposite. I think what happens here is that if a parent is not able to see the kid against his will, he should not have to pay for the other party, for instance, the other parent to be raising a child against his will.
Yeah.
I think what we have to do is that if the person can't afford to sustain a family with a child and the other parent can, then patience, but we should never reward immoral, irresponsible, erratic behavior. That's the main problem, because the family court is a no-fault system. So what happens here is that some people are probably getting their calculators and realize that they can live at the expense of others.
Yeah.
They can destroy an innocent person's life. They can basically cause a divorce that will cause great harm to the child, but they want to be independent and live at the expense of others. And that is morally wrong. So what's happening with the system is that the system is sponsoring the dissolution of families. And as a result of that, you have people who now have been living at the expense of others and of taxpayers. That is unacceptable, and that is immoral, and that needs to stop immediately as a matter of urgency.
No, definitely, it needs to be sorted. And hopefully, fingers crossed, and to be honest with you, I don't have much faith in it after some of the stuff I'm hearing about the inquiry. Hopefully the inquiry will sort a lot of this stuff out. Now we've got another question from Trina. Sorry, I did see it, but I never got back to it. So Trina has said, my understanding is Augusto has secured inclusion of the Family Law Court inquiry in WA.
Well, that's the promise that I have received from the chair. I have the letter of this the chair, Kevin Andrews, by the way, and I am inclined to believe he's a good man. I'm inclined to believe that he was going to do the right thing. But if he doesn't do the right thing, I'll expose him and in this committee. I have a letter from him promising that these people would visit us for this hearing to be conducted also in Perth. Even though the first document didn't contain anything about Perth or Western Australia, that's when it triggered me to write this letter. To ask why Perth was not there, why we haven't been mentioned. But if that is the case, and if they actually lied to me, I have the evidence of that, and I'll expose them for what they do. So I will wait and be patient, but don't worry, because now if they don't do this, what they promised to do, we will know that this thing is not serious, and I will expose it.
Perfect. Rodney, welcome to the stream. It's just unfortunately time frame differences over New South Wales, mate. Make sure you let your mates know that it's on. Even listen in at work, like the radio. Turn the radio off, listen in to us. Greatly appreciate it. Even if you do have a question, make sure you type it in and send it through. We are live for probably about the next 40 minutes or so. I'd like to say 40 minutes. A lot of this is going to depend on the traffic. I think the whole time the stream's been going, I think we've only managed to go about 2 or 3 kilometres. So it's a pretty heavy traffic day today. And before the radio station started claiming that it was us that caused the traffic jams, no, it wasn't us. It was this bad even before we set up. So yeah, the 6PR, you can go get nicked. So just so Augusto Zimmerman understands, one of our protests, there was a accident before we set up last time, and they quite openly blamed us for it, even though the accident happened before we set up. So yeah, they didn't like it when I called them out on it. So if you guys are listening to the radio at all, let us know if we do make it onto the news. That's kind of awesome. We're actually moving a little bit now, it's good. So sorry if the video gets a little bit shaky. Shung Chang, welcome to the stream, my young friend. So in case you guys don't know, Shung is a long-time supporter of the FACRA group, been a massive help coming to the protest, so welcome to the stream. Now guys, remember, if you do have any questions, feel free to shoot them through to us. Tyler, welcome to the stream, my young friend, as well. Wow, we're getting a few people coming in. Okay, so also remember guys, this will be coming up on YouTube at later date, hopefully tomorrow. I do have another camera in the car recording as we go. It's not looking out the road because we just don't have enough space on the dash. But yeah, so there will be 2 videos. There'll be one of the road and one of us actually talking and discussing and getting our FACRA shirts out. They're lovely, lovely shirts. So if you do want one, just head on over to the website, facra.com.au. Also, whilst you're stuck in the traffic, make sure you throw a hand out the window, say g'day to the guys on the bridges, give them a bit of love, give them a toot on the horns. I know the train drivers absolutely love watching these things. Marjo, welcome to the stream, my young friend. How are you today, my gorgeous, gorgeous young lady? In case you guys don't know, Marjorie does a lot of the editing for our videos, so she's been an absolute massive help. So from behalf of FACRA, thank you for all the hard work that you put in. All right, has anyone got any questions for Professor Augusto Zimmerman? So while we're waiting, I will just ask you, so we've got it actually in the live stream. We were discussing this earlier about the actual role of the Law Reform Commissioner in WA. Do you mind telling the people watching exactly what that job actually entailed and how you feel that it could have adversely affected the results of some of these laws coming out?
Well, the Law Reform Commission plays a very important role. Unfortunately, I'm not even so sure whether the role is a good one, but certainly I hope that they think the same. My appointment to the commission was important because I was not interested in playing politics there, or doing the government's bid. What I try to do as a commissioner is to be completely independent and to be seeking the best interests of the people in Western Australia, because there was a lot of farm commission here in Western Australia. The government sends us terms of reference. That's coming from the Attorney General, by the way, and every single commissioner in the Law Reform Commission is appointed by the Attorney General. So my first appointment to the commission was an appointment made by the then State Attorney General Christian Porter. I think it's the only good thing he has ever done in his life was to appoint me. I'm kidding, but I think it was quite interesting just to be appointed by Christian Porter. I was appointed by him, and then I served for 5 years. I had major problems with the successor to Christian Porter, Michael Manchin, when it came to the issue of domestic violence restraining orders, because we prepared the report that was not entirely as much as it was good, could it even be better, but it was a nice report, and it was referring to the need to protect basic principles of the common law, including due process and natural justice, that it should be preserved.
All right, we've got another question from Lindsay here. Any comments on the clear shift with regards to the changes in the terms of references and the number of submissions that appear to have been denied publication?
Well, I don't know exactly, because they'll find all sorts of excuses to make such a maneuver.
Yep.
I think the point is that if names are referred by the person who makes the submission, probably this would be the case, that they would try to use this as a reason as to why the submission wouldn't be openly disclosed. That's because it contains some sort of private information, or information about names of people, something like that. We have to be very careful. These people you give all sorts of excuses that they can possibly give to not expose the seriousness of the matter. And you have also sharks in the legal profession who would be very delighted to sustain the status quo, because they have been the main benefactors of this very corrupt and evil system. So we have to be very careful. Certainly the report by the Law Reform Commission, the Australian Law Reform Commission, proves that the family lawyers are very happy to maintain the current status quo, because some of them have become millionaires. They have made so much money at the expense of people's misery. And they want to keep a system that is utterly destroying families in Australia and even taking the lives of many innocent people.
Yep. Clint Taylor, welcome to the stream. All right, so let's see if we got another question in here. We're going well. Yeah, sorry, but if it's not super exciting so far, normally we would have seen the bridge banners by now. It's just this traffic today has been absolutely diabolical. Normally I'd also be giving shout out to businesses as I go along. So like Envar Air Conditioning Mechanical Services. Welcome to the traffic. It's just we've had so much good stuff to talk to with Professor Augusto Zimmerman. Good morning too, Clint. We just haven't had much of a chance to actually give out random shout outs. So just to explain to Augusto what we've been doing for these streams, I've been giving shout outs to the businesses stuck in traffic with us, like Apex Automatic Gate Specialists, in the hope that they would turn around and sponsor FACRA. We are non-for-profit, so it is a great tax deduction. Make sure you talk to your accountant. Little disclaimer there. But yeah, guys, to get these events going, it actually does cost quite a bit of money, especially for example, the Father's Day protest that we did. You've got permits you got to get public liability insurance. There's all sorts of expenses there. So if you can afford, $5-10 here and there, it means a world to us. Also, for businesses, we do now have corporate sponsorships for our website. where your business logos can be placed on the website. So please reach out to us at facra.com.au, or alternatively, you can contact one of the people on the Contact Us list, and they'll be able to give you the information that you need about doing a corporate sponsor or just doing a normal donation. What is it? Do a couple of loops. I'll definitely try, Clint. A lot of it's going to come down to how the traffic's going. It's clearing up a little bit, so it's not too bad. We did have the phone fall over once, so I just want to make sure that doesn't happen again. But I have to admit, this is the first time I've driven on the freeway in about 3 months, and they've done a lot of changes. I'm kind of impressed. The only thing I'm a bit disappointed about, these changes should have been done 5 years ago.
But this work is taking more than 3 years, you know.
Yes, I suppose. Maybe 10 years ago then. It's one of the failings I found with especially the government that deals with like roads. They always have very, very narrow foresight, and it's becoming a major problem. Like with water management and stuff like that, they should have been doing this stuff 20 years ago, not now when it's costing 10 times more money. So anyway, we are travelling a little bit, so we're just coming up to South Street now. We should be starting to see the banners pretty soon. I don't know if you can see. Can you read that, Augusto? We've got a bit of light coming up.
I don't have my glasses.
you got my.
I can't read without glasses.
You've got my curse there.
Yeah.
All right. Looks like it's another question from Lindsay. When the traffic gets bad, I'll have a read, Lindsay. I'll get to it in a minute. I just really don't want to have a crash, so
I'll help you with that. I'll let you know. Yeah. Now we can.
All right, here we go. Let's have a look. See more. Oh, that's hard to read. Okay, what is the professor's view on Section 3 of the Freedom of Information Act? Seems the balance has shifted way too far and making FOI, so Freedom of Information applications, almost a waste of time now that the law seems to be more protecting third parties than the person's rights to information.
Well, this is the problem. It looks very much like a situation that we would be facing if you lived in a totalitarian regime, because the fact that this information, sometimes very crucial pieces of information, cannot be disclosed as a result of these sort of provisions, that makes it very difficult for the average citizen to actually expose some problems that it would be of the interests of the society as a whole to know. So basically, this can actually make it very difficult for certain issues to be addressed properly, especially when it involves certain dubious mismanagements or behaviors of the. What's that?
I don't know if you guys just saw that. The white Falcon nearly took out the back end of another car changing lanes without looking. So
I didn't see that.
The joys of Perth traffic. People just don't care. Sorry about interrupting.
No. That's what I was saying is that it protects sometimes people from being exposed to certain behaviors that actually are detrimental, not only to the person that has interacted with this agency or perhaps this public servant, but it can actually be a problem that will affect society and others in the future, because we are not able to expose certain actions that actually are detrimental not only to the person who has been involved with these bureaucrats, but also with others. And this is a major problem. It actually happens also with judges in Australia. So if you have a judicial matter, if you have a court proceeding, and if you are being mistreated, or if you feel that the proceedings are not being properly conducted, and you try to expose the matter, chances are that rather than the judge being exposed, rather than the system being exposed, you will be punished for revealing the truth. you'll be punished for trying to do the right thing, which is really unbelievably bad. I think in a democracy, we should have transparency. I think if you live in a totalitarian regime, you should expect to be oppressed, but not to be living in Australia and feel that you are oppressed. Especially when you have to go through all these problems and then become a slave of the state by having to pay perhaps between 70 and 80% sometimes of your income as a result of, for instance, having to pay taxes that are very high in this country. We have too much government. At the same time, we end up having to pay child support. So basically, you live as a slave. I believe that many people in this country are living as slaves. I think if in the good old days, that would trigger a revolution even. The American founding fathers, you know, because of 15% of tax, they thought that this was outrageous. We pay sometimes 70, 80% of tax in this country. Some people really live to pay taxes and give money to others. It is unbelievable. And that's is one of the causes of depression, suicide, when you basically work like a dog and you don't have any benefits offered because all this money that you have worked so hard to obtain, to have, is basically stolen from you.
Now, taking that a step further, I deal a lot with FIFO guys. My brother is FIFO. He actually stays with us once a week. Because the expenses out keeping a car at the airport is ridiculous. So I deal a lot with the BHP guys out there, and they're pretty much their standard tax rates around 50%. And talk to them, a lot of them don't care about paying taxes as long as it's flat and even across the board. Like, everyone should be paying the same tax. Everyone should be sharing the load. Now, the other thing I wanted to extend on Augusto Zimmermann's comment there about the family law court, I would love to know on his opinion, but just quickly before we get to that, if you are from WA, please make sure you invite your friends to watch this live stream. We are trying to get it out to as many people as possible because the FACRA guys really do a monstrous amounts of work behind the scenes to get these events organised. We could always do with more volunteers to help us out and more coverage about what we're actually doing. A lot of people, just to quickly clear up a misconception as well, they think we're a men's group. You'll probably notice in all our discussions here, not once have we ever said anything about men versus women or women versus men. Our primary goal is to make sure that the kids themselves have access to both parents.
No, look, this is a very important point that you're making, Travis, because we are not going to become like the feminists.
Oh, no, definitely
not.
We
are not going to be gender-based. Because that's akin to something similar, at least, to what the Nazis did. Think about that. We don't discriminate people on the basis of gender, as we wouldn't discriminate on the basis of race or on the basis of religion. Any discrimination based on biological considerations is, objectively speaking, unjust.
Exactly.
Because people are individuals, and some individuals are better than others and do the right thing, others do the wrong thing. I think what we have to do is to treat everyone equally before the law. Everybody has the same rights and the same freedoms to enjoy. So what we advocate for is for dignity, human dignity, and the equal treatment of everyone, regardless of gender, sex, orientation, or religion. We should always be equal before the law.
Exactly. Perfect. Very well spoken, Augusto. So just going back to the question is, in regards to the family law court side of things and the freedom of information, obviously to protect children, they redact the kids' information, and a lot of times they just redact section 121, I think it is. You're just not allowed to report on anything that happens within the family law court. So it's sort of like to me, it's a license for judges to get away with whatever they want, and there's nothing you can do about it. So one of the things I've always thought about is making the family law court, obviously redact the children's names, but making it super transparent, having all court cases video recorded, having the voice recordings available to the public to be reported on, just making it absolutely transparent. Do you think that would go anywhere to curbing any of the biasness that is received from not only from the lawyers but also from certain judges within the family law court system?
I think it is the case. If one of the parties feel that it is something that's necessary to expose the truth of the matter, I don't think if the parties are satisfied with the outcome of the matter, or if they don't want to expose their privacy to the public, perhaps they should have the right to keep these private. But if the party is unsatisfied and thinks that this would serve the common good by exposing the matter and what happened at these proceedings, I think it would be the right of the citizen, of the individual citizen, to make this decision. So basically, I don't think it should be public necessarily, but it would be public if the parties were willing to disclose the information and disclose what took place at the family court during these proceedings. So basically, to cut short, to just explain this matter more properly, it should be always the right of the individual to make the choice. So if the person is a party in the system and thinks that because of the treatment envisaged on him, the situation is so bad that it should be exposed, I think he should have the right to expose the matter and make the people in the society to be able to think by themselves whether something really bad has happened or not.
Okay, section 121 protects the family law cartel from Clint. Thank you very much. We have been 100% Augusto. We are being suppressed, oppressed, and people are blind to it. The good news is the sheeple are actually waking up. So I do personally feel these videos that we're making are making a difference. A lot of people are. The last time I did one of these, I think in the first hour we had like 20,000 interactions within the first hour, which, to be honest with you, that's the first time I've ever done anything that widespread, I suppose is the right word for it. So I was kind of hoping to be that on this video. So I'm not too sure how we'll go, considering the traffic is pretty much just been looking at the back of the car in front of us. But yeah, no, some of the information in this has been absolutely phenomenal. Lindsay, thanks for the answers. Not a problem, Lindsay. It's pretty much what we're here. This is why we do these live streams, to bring awarenesses to some of the issues within the family law court, and actually get a professional, well, professor, take on it. Because we do, with my work within the political parties, I do have access to quite a few lawyers, and the different comments and different answers that we receive are so vast and so varied. And so having someone of Augusto's caliber is a really, really great help. So guys, make sure you keep sending those questions through in your comments, just so we can ask the professor while we've got him. Now let's see, we just covered section 121 on the family law court. Just on furthering on that one, do you think it would be possible if both parties, before going into a hearing, if they both say, right, I am happy for the events of this case, hearing, judgment to be made public prior to actually going in, do you think that, and then so therefore section 121 doesn't come into account?
Well, I think it would be very hard, because if both parties have to consent on this, that would make it almost impossible, because I have noticed that sometimes there is always one who is actually acting maliciously. Not necessarily, perhaps both parties in this dispute, because you're talking about if the matter is sent to the court, is because there was no possibility to amicable agreement being made. So that's why it escalates and goes to the family. I think it's almost like crazy and an act of madness if both parties can negotiate by themselves the matter. And they end up trusting judges and bringing this matter to the family courts. The matter is only at the family court if one of the parties was unwilling to make agreement to strike a deal before this matter reaches such a proportion. So when you say to me that both parties would have to agree to disclose this information, that this would be then available to the general public, this is never going to happen, because one of the parties is not acting in good faith. So as a matter of fact, we have at the family court a reward for people who act in bad faith. And that's when these false accusations are coming. They are coming as a result of the rewards that are available for people who use such a device. Why is that? Because of course perjury is not being punished, because you can alienate the other parent by making a false accusation, for instance, of domestic violence,
Yep.
and so forth. So do you think the party who is actually maliciously, who is actually applying this strategy, will be willing to allow the other party to disclose the matter? Of course not.
It was more for me trying to be sneaky, and
Yeah.
I've noticed there's a few people who are a little bit daft, and
Yeah.
so there's a good chance that if they know going into a court hearing that they're planning to do it, you know straight away they're not going to
Yeah,
sign it.
yeah.
So your legal advisors or whatever would know, right, this guy's trying to play dirty.
Yeah.
Also, if they were, we'll say, daft enough to actually agree to it, and then they did tell lies in the courts, and then they got caught out, and then there's something that you can take further action, because you've actually got the evidence of it straight away. There's no dealing with Section 121. So it was more of me trying to give people an opportunity to make things a little bit smoother for people that aren't the brightest. Now, in that one, we have just had a comment come from Lindsay saying they were sorry they couldn't make it today, but we'll be getting to the 21st of Feb to hear Professor Augusto Zimmerman. So this is a time for a bit of shameless plugging here. So
about what one of our friends, he's a good man, I appreciate him, and he was very happy to support my college that's being open to become an university in the future, Sheridan College. We are now trying to set up a decent university in this country because the others are doing a very bad job. So this is, we will be receiving Andrew Hasty, and he's going to be talk about, I think the title of his presentation is very interesting stuff. It's about feeling afraid of the realities that are inflicting, that are threatening this country. Probably he's going to be talking about the Chinese issue. I hope he is going to address family law issues. That will be really interesting to hear. But basically, it's like his concerns about the future of this country and the suppression of freedom of speech and so forth.
Yep.
Well, he's a good man, you know. I wish the Liberal Party had more people like him. Unfortunately, that's not the case.
Well, hopefully maybe One Nation can pick him up.
Exactly.
So, okay, so we've just had another question, statement here. Is well timed that perjury to be enforced? Now, just going on to perjury, so the next question I'll throw out there. What is the difference between perjury and contempt of court?
Well, I think there's the two different issues, entirely different. Contempt of court is that if you do something that violates the determination or the normal course of the proceedings, that would be contempt of court, the disregard of something the court determines to be done. Perjury is far more serious, in my opinion, because perjury is the deliberate attempt to destroy the reputation, the image of another person. It's perjury is when you lie to the court, and by doing so you distort the natural course of justice to be provided. So what happens with perjury is that the person is attempting to distort the reality in order to obtain an undue advantage at the court, and by doing so leading to miscarriage of justice as a result.
Okay.
And what I have seen is that some magistrates at the Western Australian Family Court, because I have to make this point, because of course these crooked lawyers in the eastern states are claiming that if you have the abolition of the Federal Family Court, everything will be perfect. But in Western Australia, we have judges, Western Australian judges, who actually, in their final decision, confess that one of the parties has been acting in a malicious way. I have these with me. I have these documents, and they confess that, you know, the other party who, for instance, has full custody over the child, only obtained this custody as a result of making false accusations. For instance, like obtaining a violence restraining order, when later on it's found that the person is completely innocent and haven't done anything wrong. When it happens, the courts tend to say that in order to maintain or keep the routine of the child, because the child perhaps is now living with the person who made the false accusation. They will keep the child with the false accuser. When, as a matter of fact, that is what leads to the incentive to these people do this in the first place, because family lawyers now know that if they instruct their clients to make a false accusation, that's the best chance they have to have full custody of a child.
And that's just wrong.
It's
flat out
it's
wrong.
Absolutely evil. And to be frank with you, because the custody, given the bias of the family courts in favor of the mother, now we're going to, and they are the culprits and responsible for the dissolution of the marriage. They will be destroying the life of the woman by making a false accusation first, because that's the best chances they have to obtain some sort of better deal or even full custody of a child. So what we now see, and I have seen some women coming to me saying that they lost total custody of the child because the husband was having an extramarital affair and he wanted to have the divorce. But because he knew that he would get rid of this wife because he now has another person to live with and he doesn't want that marriage anymore, that the best way to go is to make this false accusation by going to the police, by reporting her for being abused of the children. Until this matter is investigated, he has the custody of the kids. So I know of many women now who have lost custody over the kids because it's the matter of who strikes first. Because if the person is wanting to act maliciously and planning in advance, he'll have the upper hand at the family court. How is that you have a system that promotes so much injustice? So as a matter of fact, I always tell people, as a matter of joke, that you don't have a court of justice in this country, at least when it comes to family law matters. What we have is a court of injustice, where injustice prevails.
Alright, let's have a look here. We've got another comment here. There are judges in the family courts of WA who have discriminated and bullied parents. It's been going on for years. They need to be exposed. Good one there, Clint. Wow. Okay, so Trina, I'd love to be able to read all that one. It's just massively too long for the screen as we're driving. Are you able to repost it, but keep it to about 10 lines at a time? Sorry, it's just really hard to see while to read and drive at the same time. We probably shouldn't be doing that, but you know, limited hands and we're both blind as a bat, so
I can't help you. I can't read anything there.
No, all good. Okay, now, also guys, remember, please do not call me at the moment. I've had a couple of phone calls come through. When the calls come through, it does cut off the live stream for a little bit. So please don't call me. Send me a text message or a WhatsApp message if you're on WhatsApp, and I'll be able to read it out from there for you. Now, also, my lovely wife has just joined in on the stream, so welcome to the stream, darling. Alright. Yeah, what I'll do, Trina, I'll when we stop and we do a loop, I'll go have a reread of it for you. It's for Augusto inclusion in the WA. Oh, it's someone posted part of your submission on in the group chat, so everyone can have a read. If you do get a chance to, have a read of Professor Augusto Zimmermann's submission into the Family Law Court inquiry. It was brilliant. It went so far as to pretty much give a full blueprint as to how to solve a lot of these issues facing the family law court system, not just federally but also state-based side of things as well. It was absolutely phenomenal. I'm not a lawyer sort of person, so it took me a couple of times to read it, but it was so well structured. And for a layman, like I said, I'm not stupid, but I'm not the smartest tool in the shed either. It was pretty easy to understand after I read it the second time. It was a phenomenal submission. So and it's one of the reasons I decided to reach out to Augusto Zimmermann in the first place. It's just the wealth of knowledge this gentleman has is just absolutely insane. So yes. So anyway, guys, welcome to the new people who've just jumped in. We've had a couple jump in, so I've missed your names as they pop up on the screen. So yeah, and don't forget, if you guys do have any questions, please shoot them through so we can answer them. And like I said, get Augusto excuse me, to actually answer them off for you. These videos will be going up on Facebook. Well, obviously Facebook is live as we speak, but you'll be able to replay them later on Facebook and also YouTube. And I'll also put links to it on my personal YouTube channel and also my personal Facebook channel as well. So for the guys who aren't friends with myself already, please come and jump onto mine, Travis Carter. All my pages are bright orange. Gee, I wonder why. And I've also got a YouTube channel. I will be planning to run out the next state election. I'm planning to get YouTube to pay for it, so I need 1,000 subscribers. So please jump onto my YouTube. Also jump onto the FACRA YouTube channel as well. So that's Family and Children's Rights Australia. Oh, whoops. That one fell over. All right, where's the other mount? There it is. Sorry guys, the camera just fell over. Yeah, put that one in. Yeah. All right, it's getting a little bit warm out there, so I'll put the demisters on to keep the air conditioner, to keep the phone nice and cool. Oh, wow, I think we've been going for nearly an... Oh, that's loud. Alright guys, can I just get a sound check off you guys to let me know if that air conditioner is too loud on the live stream, please? Alright, it says we're still live. Thanks, son. Alright, we've got another comment here from Lindsay. Let's see, apart from the no flaws to the VRO Act, does the professor think it would be possible to change the award costs to charge awarding costs for a malicious VRO application? So to put in another word, so let's say me and Augusto, in the interest of diversity, we are in a relationship. Augusto beats me up. You bad man. So I take a VRO out on him, but I've lied through my teeth and he didn't do anything to me. We're not even in a relationship. So this has caused Augusto to suffer time loss, financial loss, possible problems with his work. So because I've lied on the VRO, should Augusto be awarded damages? So that's pretty much the scenario.
Yeah, I think it is a form of domestic violence and abuse to make a false accusation. One thing that's very interesting is that sometimes the person who files for this restraining order is the perpetrator of domestic violence, not the other way around. Certainly a person who is doing such a thing is acting in a despicable fashion. And a person who makes an accusation of this kind, and this accusation is found to be entirely unsubstantiated, is in the process of committing a very terrible, heinous crime. It's actually destroying a person who happens to be his partner or her partner. So we have to be very careful about understanding that not everybody who files for a domestic violence order is necessarily the victim. It might be the perpetrator, actually. And that's what I have actually mentioned in my report for the Law Reform Commission, that sometimes the so-called victim is actually the perpetrator. And more than that, I can tell you that some people here are incited by certain operators in the system to make an accusation of this kind, or even provoke the victim to react to an act of provocation. Why is that so? Because if a woman can lead the person to a state of utter desperation, this person might lose his mind. And one strike is enough. So I have seen women who actually provoke the man to the point of utter desperation. And that's when he, in a state of utter despair, ends up saying something that might be not good. It doesn't even need to be an act of violence because it can be actually verbal abuse. But in the reaction to the act of provocation, you'll be used in order to obtain the restraining order. So what I'm telling you is that even when you have a conversation around the kitchen table, in the kitchen, can be used against you to destroy your life. So we don't have peace even at homes these days. And some people of a weak mind might be able to perhaps be tempted to use such a strategy in order to perhaps obtain a de facto divorce.
Okay, guys, the camera's going to get a little bit shaky for a minute. We've actually been in traffic for an hour and a half, and we've only gone about 15 kilometres.
But what I have to say also, because the question was about punishment, is that it should be treated as domestic violence. An act of this nature is an act of a person who is basically turning himself or herself into an enemy of his or her partner. It is a despicable thing, and should be the full force of the law used against this person. So it should be added to the category of gross instance of domestic violence to do such a thing. And it should be considered even a criminal act of behavior. It should be added to the criminal code.
Definitely. Oh, wow, that's an interesting decision there. So the reason for the camera getting shaky all of a sudden, we've been in traffic for about an hour and a half, streaming for probably close to an hour now. Unfortunately, my battery's nearly dead, so I've had to put the charger in. One thing I do wish that Facebook would kind of fix is that it allows the camera to be sideways whilst we're streaming. But that's right, we'll get it sorted. So just going back on that one, so we were discussing about not just the emotional abuse that some couples inflict on each other. There's been a lot of contentious... you got it there?
You can hold it this way.
There we go, I'm just worried it's going to fall off again.
Yeah, because if you hold it, you get a big fine.
Thanks, Augusto.
Yeah.
So there's been a lot of talk around what is violence and what is abuse. So, prime example, let's say you've got a stay-at-home partner who has access to credit cards. One person, the other party loses their job, so they say, right, we don't have to shut down the credit cards to save money. That apparently is considered domestic violence. So what I'd like Professor Augusto's opinion on, how can we stop things where you're just budgeting, things that aren't, because to me violence is assault, battery, physical harm. Mental abuse isn't violence, it's abuse. It's still bad and you shouldn't be doing it. If you are, please stop it.
No, another thing is that even the word abuse and violence, as you know, Travis, has been interpreted in a very liberal way. So, for instance, when it comes to abuse, what do you mean abuse? Because, for instance, there is something called financial abuse that is considered to be, in this day and age, by the law, which is like a bad law, by the way, a form of violence. So that is a very liberal or broad interpretation or understanding of the word violence. So the word violence has become more than just physical violence. It's become like all sorts of things. And of course, legislators and judges and lawyers can be quite creative on the interpretation of this meaning of violence. But what I have to tell you is that sometimes you have reasons to have your own bank account being a sole account rather than be a joint bank account. I might have a wife who is struggling with drug addiction, for instance, or gambling. And, you know, we have such crazy laws in this country, and the politicians are so incompetent that they have added this thing about financial abuse, saying that if you don't share your bank account with your wife, it might be construed as a form of financial, I would even use the word violence, financial violence, because that's domestic violence includes financial abuse. But it's not abuse at all. You are just trying to protect the person and the finances of the family. I mean, if I work hard like a dog, and then I have this bank account, and my wife is needing to be protected because she has a problem with drugs or alcohol or gambling, I'm preserving her.
Okay.
I'm protecting her and my family. But you know, if someone tells her you can still have your drugs, you can still have your gambling, you just need to obtain a restraining order in this case that will force your husband to do the right thing. By the way, a restraining order for financial abuse, it's crazy. It should never be there. I'll tell you why. You can never solve a financial problem alienating the person who needs to talk to you about the financial issue.
Yep.
So one thing that I did as a commissioner when these feminists came to talk to us is to ask, how can you solve a financial issue by getting rid of the person you have to talk about the financial matter? So it's not the proper instrument. Even if there was a justification that's reasonable and rational to the financial issue, a restraining order is not the proper means by which the solution of the problem will be achieved. You can't achieve a solution of a financial problem by stopping you from talking to the person. It makes no sense whatsoever. So it's quite clear also that this is just another strategy or excuse given to a person who is deliberately wanting to do more than just having a financial matter resolved. It's actually a strategy to reach or to hit a person who happens to be sometimes a very good husband or a very good wife,
Okay.
for that matter.
Okay, Hugh Williams, awesome guys, would have loved to have been there, but unfortunately, as you know, they, in brackets, the Family Law Court have hammered me and still do for protesting last year on Father's Day. Love what you do, support 100%. Hugh, do you mind just chucking in a comment if you don't mind me telling Augusto what actually happened to yourself? As I've spoken to Hugh personally about it a few times, and I just want to make sure I've got his permission to have a chat to him. What happened, I find, is personally absolutely disgusting. The judge involved should be brought over the coals, and to be honest, they don't even deserve to be a judge in my personal opinion. But okay, absolutely, thanks for that, Hugh. It's been a while since I've dealt with this one, so just correct me if I got any of these details wrong. So Hugh attended one of the FACRA Father's Day protests. So the whole point of the Father's Day protest was we wanted to get dads who didn't have access to their kids on one of the most important day for dads, which is Father's Day, out of their homes, and to try and prevent suicide by having them involved in the community, doing events along the lines of act, belong, commit. You act, do something. As long as you're active and you're mentally stimulated, you're a lot less likely to commit suicide. So Hugh brought both his Clint is definitely full ball on it. Hugh brought his, I think it was both your boys down to the Father's Day protest with us. There was some amazing photos done by a Contar photographer, who's actually one of our sponsors. And so he obviously put the photo up of his son up on Facebook, and then his ex decided to take a screen print of his Facebook post and took it and asked for an immediate court hearing and requested that he have no access to his children because he's taken them to an extremist men's group rally protest. And he now correct me on this one if I am wrong, Hugh, did you lose custody or did you get put to supervised visits only? So yeah, so the judge immediately, without even finding out who we were, ruled in favour of his ex that we were an extremist men's group, and my understanding is he went to supervised visits. Yeah, and they were brilliant photos. They were so well done. So Contar photography. Their link to their website is actually on our supporters section on our website. So facra.com.au. All right. Just waiting for Hugh to confirm whether he lost custody or if it went to supervised visits. But we did end up helping him to fight the battle and putting appeal in. And the great news is, my understanding, Hugh, you've got access to your kids again. Sorry, it's just waiting for the comments to come through.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, what a day to have a massive traffic jam. Okay, no, she didn't get what she wanted, but judge forced me to apologise for using your child at the protest. Can I just get you to delete that comment, Hugh? It's just our caution because you have put your kid's name in there. And well done and making sure nothing changed on the access side of things. Jaden, thanks for joining us, mate. Long time no see. We'll have to catch up in one time. Yeah, so it's just, I don't know if we're going to get classed as a media outlet for this. So just try not to put your kids' names in any of these posts. So yeah, but a judge pretty much berated Hugh in front of everyone, saying how he's a bad father for taking his kid to it was a peaceful protest. It was a rally to support fathers who were going on Father's Day, who were ashamed, sad that they couldn't have access to their kids. And for a judge to behave in that way, first of all, he was making assumptions, literally making assumptions about FACRA and who we were without actually finding out. So the judge straight up believed the allegations made by Hugh's ex-partner and sided with her and actually treated him like a criminal.
In many ways, this sort of situation, a person who accuses this group of being extreme is extreme herself.
Yeah.
So, but as a matter of fact, when you accuse a group who is trying to fight the good fight for the reform of the system, so that equality before the law can be restored, so that the rule of law can prevail. This person reveals herself to be a very despicable human being. So what I have to say about this poor guy who had this problem is that his ex-wife, objectively speaking, is a radical feminist because she is an extreme person who is a radical feminist, an intolerant and a bigot, because she is fighting for the maintenance or the sustaining of the current status quo that is actually unequal, unfair, utterly unjust. And what you are with this group doing is just to fight for the rights of every single one in this country to have access to their kids when a divorce, or unfortunately disrupts the routine of the family, and unfortunately the parents can't live together. We are just wanting to have justice established. We just want that every child will have the right to have a real meaningful relationship with both parents if possible. So if a person opposes such a reasonable proposition, if a person is against a child to have a meaningful relationship to her kid, to his kid, this person is, objectively speaking, committing indirectly an act of child abuse, because it is supporting parental alienation. I must say that this judge, what he did is either ignorant or actually he revealing his true colors. But certainly this woman is misleading the judge in this case, and it should not be acceptable. If the judge is able to really do his research properly, he'll be able to know that this group is just fighting for equal rights.
But yeah, if it was a women's group fighting for equal rights, they'd be applauded and congratulated. But unfortunately, because we're fighting for equal rights, not only for kids, but fathers and everyone associated within the family law court system, we get treated as extremists. So it's just, it is a little bit sad, a little bit frustrating.
But I think it's time for us to be bold and courageous. I think it's time to us to expose the fascistic nature of the feminist agenda. Because many women, the vast majority of women, are good, wonderful people who have husbands, who have sons, and they are as concerned as anybody else about the feminist threat in this country, which is probably the worst ideology in terms of inflicting pain, in terms of reforming the laws for the worst over the last 20 years or so. This country has been radically transformed for the worse as a result of this small minority of radical activists who are actually imposing a rather totalitarian and unjust ideology.
All right, guys, just to give you a bit of an update, I think we're out, we've just passed Leach Highway. I think we're about Bullsbrook train station. It's kind of funny because people have had a cry at us about having our banners on the freeway before, but if you have a look at this great big banner over the top of us, underneath the Main Roads Act, it says that you're not allowed to have, no banners will be approved on the freeway, but yet, what's that thing there?
Exactly. It's so ridiculous, indeed.
It's insane. So we are doing a peaceful protest. We're not blocking anyone's view. We're not making a distraction. The banners are extremely well made. They've cost a bloody fortune, to be honest with you.
Everything's so overregulated in this country. And I think that's when you face these family court issues, I have some of these victims coming to me to say that they are even afraid of receiving letters these days from the government. Because normally when it comes to your mailbox, it's always bad news. You always have to pay a tax or something. Your friends don't send letters to you these days.
No.
And do you know what happens? Some people even get so traumatized they don't even have courage to open the mailbox. That will be a tax more to pay, an ATO letter, or it will be like another court issue or a bill. Some people are getting really oppressed and really traumatized. It's really amazing because when I came to Australia, I thought I would have a very peaceful and comfortable life and everything would be perfect. But I think God called me to a time such as this. I thought I was getting a reward, but I have never worked so much, you know. And there is so much to be done in this country. And it's so not realistic to say that you still have the rule of law fully realized in this country when you see so much of miscarriage of justice. And you know, to have the rule of law only works when the laws are good. And well, if the law is bad, I prefer even to live in state of nature. At least I don't have to face the Leviathan. So the big government is the worst possible thing. So if you have a system that works, but works for the benefit of the crooked ones and as an instrument of oppression, it's better to live under the state of nature then.
Simon Bartlett, thank you for coming in. Martin Shaw, thank you for coming in as well. If I can, guys, because I know both of them are WA boys, can you just share it with your friends? We've been talking with Professor Augusto Zimmerman, very, very knowledgeable gentleman and former law reform commissioner in WA. So he knows his stuff inside out. So awesome having a chat with him. It would have been nice to actually see some of these banners. Hopefully the police haven't told us to pack them up yet. But the traffic has been absolutely insane. I don't think the car has registered a speed for more than 30 seconds the whole trip. We actually got on the freeway about 6:45. It's 20 past 8 now. And we've gone maybe 20 kilometers, if that.
It's
so
pathetic, really.
It's shocking. Apparently it's been this way since 6 o'clock this morning.
Shocking.
So it wasn't us that caused it. So just to be clear.
It's not really renamed this. It's not a freeway, it's a slow way.
Very, very slow way. Now, Luan, if you're still watching, can I get you to contact Arthur and just let him know that I'm still stuck in traffic and I will probably be a little bit late returning the car. Just so people know, my air conditioner decided to stop working the other day, and so my neighbour has been gracious enough to lend me his Lexus. Oh, it is a gorgeous car. So Lexus, if you want to sponsor us, feel free to make a donation. If you do want to make a donation, jump on over to the FACRA.com.au, FACRA.com.au. I'm sorry about the camp footage being a little bit shaky. We've been on the live stream for so long now. The battery on the phone is going flat, so I've had to put the charger back into it. So once a bit of charge gets in, I'll put it back up on the mount. Alright, and guys, if you have any questions for Professor Augusto Zimmerman, please chuck the comment in. We are seeing them as they come up. Oh God, I wish this traffic would flow a little bit more. We've got some really awesome banners coming up. What I might do, because we are running out of the time frame that we were planning to have these protests on, I might get Clint to message through the wording on the banners into the comments, so that way we can get Augusto's opinion on the banners. And that's the whole point that we originally got him here for, is we wanted to get his opinion on the banners and how we can actually get that implemented in WA. So if you can just send the first banner through to us, if you don't mind, Clint. Sorry, we're just waiting for the comments to come through.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully he's not being arrested.
Yes.
So no,
Don't be surprised though. Don't be surprised.
Main roads is up and out 'em, so we might be getting to the police court.
Another thing, shortly. We don't have enough freedoms anymore.
Oh, definitely not.
Even free speech now is being curtailed by the bigots. So the more intolerant you are, the more you feel offended.
Yep.
And offendedness is one of the criteria for you being accused of committing an act of discrimination. You have Section 18C that prohibits people to express their opinions on certain issues.
Yep.
That can be even interpreted as a form of racism. And as a matter of fact, you're fighting against racism, as what happened to that QT students. They were fighting against racial discrimination. They were accused of being. So what we have in this country is like the suppression of freedom of speech. And I think it's one of the issues that I have been fighting for my whole life, and that affects also the operation of the family courts with this suppression of information or disclosure of proceedings. Is that everything is forbidden. You cannot have things in the open in this day and age. And it's not good, because how can you actually have a free society? How can you have even development if you have the suppression of discussion and debate? We should then call ourselves an elected dictatorship. What Australia has is an elected dictatorship if we start not to have the basic and most fundamental right of every truly functional democracy, naming freedom of speech, namely, better saying, freedom of speech.
Alright, awesome. So we've got a couple of the banners getting quoted through now. The first one was, cancel that, fathers are not second-class citizens. And I can attest from my personal experience dealing with Relationships Australia and Child Support Agency. Every time I deal with Child Support Agency, I feel like I'm dealing with a man-hating lesbian.
Absolutely.
So men are not second-class citizens, simple as that. Thoughts?
Well, you are totally right about that. Another thing, why on earth you have to give so much power to a bureaucrat to dictate on the destiny of your family by means of these decisions made by one single person sometimes regarding payments of child support. So I find it absurd what you're saying, that you have to face an angry woman on the other side of the line that will basically tell you how much you have to pay in child support. Well, we have to check the ideology of this person. You have to check the political orientations of this person, because sometimes she is being politically motivated by an ideology to actually act in an unfair fashion.
Yep.
What kind of country is this that such decisions are made by faceless people?
Yep.
It is outrageous. So what I tell you is that the Child Support Agency operates beyond the limits of the rule of law, beyond the limits of legality, and it is the fault of our very weak political elite in this country that has allowed this problem to take place in the first place, I must say. So what I have to say to you is that this is something that needs to be addressed. It's a very important matter that you have raised. What's the other issue that you have referred to?
The next one is, I might have missed one here, so I do apologise if I have. Stop using VROs as weapons. So we've covered that one quite extensively, but we'll cover it quickly again here for the guys that have just jumped in. So a lot of the people that we talk to in regards to the family law court issues that they've had, the other parent keeps using violence restraining orders as a weapon against them to make sure that they can't see their kids. So just another quick summary on how we can get around that. God, some of these drivers in this merging area are absolutely insane. Like, how hard is it just to do a zipper 1 for 1? Like, Mr. Blue Hyundai i30 and the white Mercedes that came through earlier, you really need to pull your head in, guys. It's going to save you all of 10 seconds, but you nearly caused a crash multiple times. So just behave. Anyway, yeah, so VROs as weapons, you need to stop doing it. Like, if you're out there and you're going through a separation and you're contemplating like using a few porcupines to try and stop the other partner from seeing your kids, you're not hurting the partner, you're hurting your kids. Like, seriously, pull your head in. what else? Okay, here's a big one we haven't touched on yet. So one of the banners actually states 50-50 shared care upon separation.
I think this is the fairest thing to do in what we now call a no-fault system.
Mm-hmm.
So if the system is based on the idea that we shouldn't be basically sorting out the responsibility behind the dissolution of the marriage contract, then the initial assumption is that both parents should have equal rights. I think we have to actually bear in mind that a person who is going to go further, because that is what it should be. We start with 50-50. The assumption that both parents should have the same rights over the custody of a child, of their common children. But if we find out eventually that the mother is trying to obtain more than 50%, or the father is trying to obtain more than 50%, either mother or father, and it starts to use this sort of malicious behavior, because even if you start with 50-50, it can lead to people trying to obtain more than just 50%. So it's not enough to have just a law saying 50-50. You have to have a law adding also that if someone tries to obtain more than 50% by making a false accusation, then that should lead to the loss of this 50%, because the person is, objectively speaking, demonstrating that she doesn't love the kids. And it's just about obtaining more financial gain, and that is coming through child support payments. We have to cut the link. It's not enough, as I say again, only 50-50. It's 50-50. Perjury must be dealt with, and the abolition of the child support agency, and then you solve the problem.
Yep. Okay, we've had a comment here come through from Jason McCraw. Welcome to the live stream. How do you deal with narc OP and the court's side with her calling you the liar, believing all her lies without evidence? So I think this is in regards to you're in the courts, you're going through a hearing, your ex is calling you a liar, and the judge is, and the supporting crew, like expert witnesses, the child support, child psychologists and things like that, believing everything she says as if it's from the Bible, and then everything that you say is lies. So how would you deal with something like that?
Well, I think it's the fault of the system to allow this to take place. One thing we have to consider is that judges are appointed by the government, and we have to start thinking about then what the governments can do to appoint better members for the judiciary. But I think it's a fault of the legal education system in this country. The universities in this country are doing a very bad job. As a legal academic, I had to face this issue as an academic myself, where some of my colleagues are driven by a very radical feminist ideology. Even at Murdoch, there was even a discussion a couple of years ago whether the law school should be officially called a feminist law school. And I regret to have opposed to that, because it would be a good thing if they actually open the game on this matter, because that's what they already are, without calling themselves as such. But it's if you study law in this state, you're going to see that many academics are not really just teaching law. They're teaching law from a very radical left-wing feminist perspective, which is basically in the business of demonizing men. And by saying, for instance, that the system is biased and inclined in favor of men, which is pathetic and ridiculous. It's actually the other way around. Sometimes a woman can become a victim of the feminist ideology, because men might perhaps have the means or to use the laws that are available if he can plan in advance for many years how to destroy another person's life. But most of the time the innocent victim will be a father, and the system is really into this game of dissolving the family unit, so that the state can step in and become a provider for this family. And when it becomes a provider for this family, you have the growth of the welfare state, which is actually another means of enslaving a person, because this person will become entirely dependent on government to survive. And of course that leads to more votes to political parties who advance this agenda of big government at the expense of the family unit. And you have some parties that are motivated by this ideology because they hate individual rights and freedoms.
Awesome. I did have a question, but I totally forgot. One thing I'm noticing is, especially talking to people who didn't go through the family courts, their relationship after the separation seems to be a lot more stable. The kids seem to be a lot better adjusted to the differing circumstances. So one thing that I've been curious about and wondering whether it'll work or not, and I've heard it floated around quite a lot, after a separation is to have a requirement that both parties individually will, because I know with my separation there was a lot of anger, a lot of hurt, and I have to say a lot of hate. I hated my ex-wife for a long time. I feel that maybe upon separation, especially if there's children involved, that it might be a very good idea for the couples to, even before they get to the court systems, is they have to go through counselling, not to try and repair the relationship, but to get them to start thinking what's in the best interest of the children.
If they go to the right people, because think about Rob Tiller, for instance, from Relationships Society. I advise everybody to avoid by all means to go to this group called Relationships Australia. My friend Rob Tiller, who is a wonderful man, such a kind person, and a wonderful counselor, because he was a problem solver, and he restored many marriages as a result of his work. So if someone is having a trouble, they should talk to Rob Tiller. Relationship trouble, because Rob Tiller is a hero for me, because he really saves families, and because he's not driven by gender bias. And as a result of being a good counselor, he was disrupting the business of family lawyers. He was disrupting the status quo as a result. And he was punished by Relationships Australia, which has, perhaps even to this very day, if it hasn't been removed already, an official policy to be feminist oriented. It's actually the president of Relationships Australia said that Rob Tiller has to be punished because he was contradicting the policies of the institution by not being driven by the feminist ideology. And that is, he was the only man in the group, by the way, and this head of this group is a radical feminist who punished him and fired him because he posted an article based on scientific evidence, empirical data, available in the Australian newspaper. And that was considered to be a breach because it is not in line with the radical feminist ideology of Relationships Australia. So avoid this group by all means. And when it comes to counseling, that can actually cause more problems than solutions if you go to the wrong people. I think one of the things that people get to know about restraining orders is exactly as a problem of counseling. When they go to counselors like in universities, for instance, when the woman is actually a hater of marriage and men because she's a radical feminist, she's going to tell this woman, why don't you accuse him of domestic violence, or why don't you provoke him a reaction so that you can get a restraining order? And even if there is no provocation, simply a so-called interpretation of the reaction of the husband to an act of provocation can be construed as an act of verbal abuse and emotional abuse. It's really, what's going on here is really problematic because some of these counselors cause more trouble than solution. So you have to actually I agree that a good counselor saves marriage, like Rob Tiller, but you have to know and separate the weed from the wheat. You have to separate those.
Yeah, very well put. That might be an idea, Clint. I'm not going to throw this one out to Clint Taylor there. How do you feel about, on the FACRA website, having a list of reputable counsellors, lawyers.
This will be a good thing.
People who can
I think you should
help.
definitely post a website with having on your website.
Yep.
Cool.
Okay, so I'll throw that one out to Clint and Marjorie to sort out.
So put this clearly to these people. What they're suggesting.
Okay, so with Augusto's comments just then, so yes, counselling is a good idea, provided you can actually get a good counsellor. So, and if you get a bad counsellor, it can be absolutely terrible situation. So, what I'm proposing is for the FACRA guys, to just another service that we can provide, is we'll actually have a website with a list of referred counsellors like this. What was it? Rob Tiller?
Rob Tiller.
Rob Tiller. So we can put his name onto the website and we can talk to other people in the community. So it's like a referral system where people can actually review different counsellors and say, I had a great experience with this guy, this is what happened. And so that way it takes a lot of the stress out of trying to find a good counsellor, a good lawyer, or a good service provider. Just talking about service providers here, I was lucky enough, I never had to go to an independent witness. I hear a lot about being charged an absolute fortune, like $400 a visit, and that's for like 1 hour's worth of work. Totally different reports to what they actually say out hearings and meetings and stuff like that. I'm hearing a lot that they wish that these meetings were actually video recorded, so that when the report that comes through is totally different to what's set out the meeting itself, we can actually use that to discredit the independent witness as being a fraud and a joke, pretty much. So I'd like to know Augusto Zimmerman's opinion on how we can make sure that independent witnesses and all the other support industries associated with separation can be kept in line to make sure they do their job properly and unbiasedly.
Well, it's once again, it's the choice of the independent witness that will make a difference. But certainly we should not allow the party to recruit these people, especially recruiting bad counselors who will write this report and add as an affidavit to the proceedings. What you have to bear in mind is that some people are very bad counselors and very bad psychiatrists and psychologists, because they take one side of the story and construe that as the whole truth. And some people can be very good liars, by the way, or can be actually, suffering from certain mental conditions. But it's very hard sometimes to detect the problem if you don't hear both parties. We should never accept a document coming from a psychologist who only listened one side of the story. And I have seen this in family court proceedings where the party who is actually narcissistic, suffering from narcissistic borderline disorder, convincing, because they can be very persuasive, and they can be, if you don't know the person more properly, you actually believe in the person. You're going to believe what the person says. But it's the person who actually writes a report in favor of a person who has provided her side of the story or his side of the story, but without hearing the other side of the story, should lose his professional accreditation. Because you know what? This is actually malpractice. Professional malpractice. No person can actually write anything to the court without having a full assessment of the matter, because or unless the person is undergoes a proper psychiatric investigation, because otherwise you can actually be used by the narcissistic person. You can be used by the person who is trying to lie to you in order to add this important document that will be used as an evidence against an innocent person. If the findings in the end of the proceedings prove that the accusations were false, and the psychologist, counselor has added a document in favor of the false accuser, it should be used as evidence to disqualify this professional. He should lose his professional license as a result. He should be severely punished.
Here on that one. We just had a comment from Jason McCall. Am I saying your name right? McCall? Apparently that's his problem that he's dealing with at the moment. Are you aware of any actions that can be taken to get this investigated in the current system, or is it another of those things that's just totally broken and needs to be fixed?
Unfortunately, it's totally broken and needs to be fixed.
Sorry about that, Jason. Bit of bad news there for you. In the current system, what are his options to get this sorted that you can think of?
I think he needs to I mean, it's not the best solution, but if the ex-wife or partner has been recruiting people to make false accusations, he has to be proactive and go to a decent psychiatrist. Goes to the GP first, and he does himself his own assessment. And adds to the affidavit saying, this is a better assessment. It's made not by a counselor, but perhaps by a psychiatrist, a professional one, saying that I have no problem. And saying that if the person makes these accusations, she probably has a problem and should consult me. And I think this is a good solution because it inverts the situation. Okay. So if you have a weak counselor, motivated by a feminist ideology, using his ideology because she wants to punish you for being a man, just go to a better person, more qualified person, perhaps a clinical psychiatrist. Get your own report, and perhaps if you're good enough, the psychiatrist will even put in the letter that he would love to have an assessment of your ex-wife. And that inverts the whole thing, and it's very important. So you have to play the game properly. You have to be bold and courageous. I know that's a very uncomfortable situation, but if you can do that, you reverse the situation and you get some better deal and better chance at the family court. Even though the court will not necessarily give you everything you want, because you know it's the problem remains, as I say, and as Travis have mentioned. It's just like a band-aid.
So one thing Simon Bartlett is... Jason was saying that they laughed out his psych report. Now, the one thing I'm hearing a lot of is people... Oh, by the way, I've just seen the first bridge banner from on top of the Mount Henry Bridge. So please bear with us. Hopefully we can make it before the police tell us to move on.
Another thing that's laughed about the psychiatrist report is that perhaps one of the solutions for a good psychiatrist report that will be suitable for you to add to the documents is actually as an affidavit, is to actually give the psychiatrist the whole picture of the situation and exposing not all. You don't go to the psychiatrist and say, look, I want just you to prove that I'm normal. What you have to do is to tell the psychiatrist what happened to you and what this woman has done to you, because perhaps you'll be motivated by compassion to be so indignant by what happened after he reads some compelling evidence to your predicament, that he might be motivated by an act of compassion and write more than just that you are a nice guy and that he thought you have done something wrong. He might actually say that he's very upset that this innocent person...
Okay, Simon, we are currently 2 kilometres away from Canning Highway. So time frame, we have been in the car for over an hour and a half, and we've gone from Thomas Road to Canning Highway.
It's pathetic.
Oh, it's insane. I must admit, a few times I've been tempted to jump into the emergency lane and just overtake a whole heap of people, but no, they'll cause a crash, so I'll be good, I'll behave. And also this is live stream, so that'd be like perfect evidence for the cops to like throw the book at me. And I'll be honest, I don't have the points for that, so I got a bit of a lead foot. I'll be the first to admit that. Let's have a look here. They laughed at my report. Okay, so talking about judges ignoring evidence within courts. So this is something we hear a lot as well. So there'll be 2 reports, one from one party, another one from another party. There'll be conflicting reports, there'll be conflicting evidence, and I hear all the time of judges totally ignoring one lot of evidence and believing hearsay from another party. How would you deal with that one?
Well, I think we have a bad judge in this case. I don't know whether if the judge is biased in favor of one of the parties, he should or she should cease to be a judge. If a judge is motivated by anything further than the objective application of the law, he should consider resigning. And perhaps he could be a member of radical political parties such as the Greens, for instance, but certainly not remain as a judge or a magistrate, because one of the basic principles of the rule of law is that decisions should be always impartially made, and judges should be objective and they should be neutral. So if you find that the judge is taking parties here, is making decisions that are biased, he is corrupting the principle of separation of powers and judicial neutrality and violating the rule of law as a result. Bear in mind that the rule of law is not the rule of judges. The judges should be under the law in a rule of law regime. So it's a very important thing to always bear in mind. So it's also, again, the failure of your very weak and incompetent politicians, because as a matter of fact, judges are appointed by the governments. And we have to start thinking about getting rid of perhaps 90% of the political elite in this country that has very few interests or regard for the average citizen in Australia. So basically we are lacking here in quality of judicial members and members of the parliaments as well.
Beautiful. Okay, so we are coming up to Canning Highway. Oh, slowly. We're getting there eventually. Just a quick shout out to Clint. Can you let me know if the banners are still up? Because this bridge here used to have a banner on it. I'm not sure if we've been told to move along yet or not.
Yeah.
Alright, well, while we wait for Clint to get back to us.
If he is not calling you from the police station.
Hopefully he's not at the police station. He shouldn't be, because it's just a peaceful protest. So as long as we follow the police instructions, they shouldn't do anything. Key word there is shouldn't. So, but we do have a very good lawyer on hand. Are you actually still classed as a lawyer?
No, I'm not a legal practitioner, thank God for that. It's I decided to be an academic to be able to talk about the law itself rather than having to please my clients. I think the good thing about being a legal academic is that you can be more independent and more critical of the system when it's necessary.
Alright, just talking of legal academics versus actual lawyers themselves, I've always had this thought, if a lawyer does something incorrect and you do lodge a dispute against the lawyer through the Legal Practitioners Board.
Legal Practice Board.
Yep. My understanding is the dispute then goes to a lawyer to work out whether the lawyer did the right thing or not. I find that silly and kind of strange, and I've always had the belief that when you're doing a dispute about an industry, it shouldn't go to someone from within that industry itself. So having judges assessing judges whether they conducted mispractice, lawyers judging lawyers, I find it very, very strange. And I've always had the thought, should law academics like yourself be a part of the auditing process when there's a complaint against a lawyer or a judge?
The answer is no, and I'll tell you why. Because I am an exception to the rule. 99% of the legal academics in this country are dreadful. And so basically, if I had a very unpleasant time at Murdoch University when I was an academic. I was hated by some of my peers just because I happened to be pro-family, just because I happened to be in favor of individual rights and freedoms, in favor of academic freedom, and in favor of freedom of speech and assembly. It's amazing that we find a reality such as this, that academics in this country, some of them oppose freedom of speech, oppose the reform of the family law system, because some of them actually are there to change the society for the worse. Don't forget this, Travis. Academics tend to be social engineers. They actually have, that's why they're not in the legal profession, because they have a goal to change. And the worst thing is people with good intention, whose intention are bad. So you have, for instance, that old saying in English, in the English speaking world, that hell is paved with good intention. And I think that it's not entirely true, because I believe the best way to go on this matter is to say that hell is occupied with people of good intention. Because the worst thing you can possibly have, and the most oppressive thing, is to be under the dictatorship of people of intentions that are not necessarily going to be good, but they think are good, and they want to impose upon others.
Okay.
And if they are brainwashed, think about that. These lawyers, they were formed and molded by these legal academics.
Okay.
Actually, you are giving to the legal academics who are the culprits in many ways. So what I have to tell you, Travis, is that the lawyers are bad, the judges are bad because of the poor state of legal education in this country and tertiary education in general. That's why you need Sheridan.
Okay.
That's why you need to actually think about now send your kids to Sheridan College, which is the only higher education provider where the kids will be protected from brainwashing and ideological indoctrination.
Perfect. Now, bit of a shameless self-plugging here again. So, Sheridan College, what years do you deal with?
It's a tertiary education. It's like in America, universities can have two names. One is not university and college.
Yep.
College in America means university, basically. It's tertiary education. And we are college because we live in a rather quasi-socialist country where Texas tells us that we cannot be called as such at this point in time.
Yep.
So what we provide is actually the same as an university.
Yep.
It's tertiary education is we are giving. Also just established the School of